this podcast is usually revolving around Twitch streamers, and it's revolving around Twitch stream growth and, of course, personal life growth. But I do want to do change of pace for the podcast. I've been looking for more variety, and maybe not just variety on the content creation or Twitch streaming platform, but I've been looking for variety on people who are, and you were like the perfect guest for it, because people who have a role in the gaming community, but not quite a content creator as much as like a leadership role, along with just Twitch streamers. I mean, this podcast also focuses on growth and leadership. That's the reason I wanted to have you on. And how's everything going today?
Good, man. Pretty good. Pretty busy week, but feel pretty good.
And thank you for being here. Our 11th guest on the podcast. Podcast has been going since April of 2020, so thank you for continuing it with your support and of course the chat today. And if you want to give a rundown to everyone, sort of who you are and what you're all about.
Most people online know me as Haul, Haul. My real name is Brandon. I have a real life as well. So right now, focusing a lot on not only the team, Ascension. If you don't know who we are on that, it's a content team. YouTube as well. I'm a big review person. I do a lot of review videos on YouTube. And then I also just started a podcast myself, which is called What's Your Superpower? And I'm having a lot of fun with that. So big into leadership, big into business in general, and just groups of people and making them better and all that stuff.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the content creation organization that you had started. So like what was the initial spark that sort of got you interested in creating Ascension?
All the gross stuff that came out early 2020 when Mixer died, TwitchCon exploded, and all of these really well-known content creators that were doing some awful things, and executives at some of these companies that were doing awful things. That's kind of what really frustrated me.
Yeah.
I always refer to this content world, whether it be streaming or YouTube or whatever, it's kind of the Wild West. There's not a lot of rules and not a lot of direction on, I think, what's right and what's not right. That'll come, it's kind of like Silicon Valley at the start. It was craziness and you're just trying to survive and get to the top as fast as you can. And I think as money and marketing money and advertising money starts coming into the business, which we're already seeing some of that, right? I mean, streamers and creators are on movies now, which is insane. Those regulations are going to have to come. So really, Ascension was built out of that because I realized that there's a lot of people who start down this venture who become leadership figures that maybe don't want to be very quickly. As soon as you start a community, you're technically a leader at that time.
Yeah.
Without a lot of direction. So Ascension was created to have like-minded people that have values that are trying to be a positive influence on the world and grouping them together so that when businesses are looking for people to promote their brands, they're already vetted through our team so they can say, okay, we believe in the creators that are with this group and with this organization because we know what they're about. So that's kind of how it started.
You spoke about leadership. What does that mean to you from a definition standpoint?
Yeah, so to me, leadership is being in a place where you are helping people grow more than they are today through humility and through growing yourself, learning, admitting you're wrong, but the whole time, keeping a vision of everyone bettering themselves in whatever environment. So creating culture and places for people to work or exist, or a community or whatever it looks like in whatever phase of life you're in. Have people feel included, feel safe to bring things up, be innovative, be creative in all spaces. And that's not only like I work in a construction company in my day-to-day. And so you wouldn't really think of creativity and innovation in that space, but innovation needs to exist in all businesses because that's how you solve problems. And the faster you solve problems, the more money you make. Creating that space around anything, where there's groups of people, so that everybody can be innovative and happy and efficient and all that stuff.
When dealing with maybe managing other people, do you find that your leadership experience sort of rubs off on them and creates leaders of their own, such as this organization, let's say?
For sure. So It's interesting because I mean, obviously, culture starts at the top. Everybody's probably heard that a million times. So the things you let go, or the things you don't let go, or uh, all of those instances and how people react in those is really kind of what sets the tone, and then that bleeds down through the organization. You have to be consistent. Humility goes, we already kind of touched on that, but that goes a long way into that piece. You can't act like you know everything. My, I'm going down my rabbit hole here.
I love it.
um so the one thing, the major thing I think people have that people struggle with in leadership is insecurity. Everyone has some form of insecurity, but the more that plays a prominent role in your life, I think the harder it is to be a leader that's actually going to be effective,
Very
because you're
true.
going to start making decisions because you're not sure how people are going to react or take or whatever. So it's interesting. Like I'm a leader at my work and in the construction industry, and like I am probably the most inefficient, ineffective person at mechanical task. Like hanging a picture for me, like the things behind me is a task for me because I
Yeah.
just can't do it and I'm awful at it. But
Hmm.
when it comes to electronics and things like that, that I understand that world very much.
Yeah.
So I get to work with people who are so good at building things and visualizing that and being able to look at drawings and all of that stuff, and I'm not. And
Hmm.
it's one of the first things I did when I got into the group was like, listen, these are the things I'm awful at, but these are the skills I think I'm good at. And you have to be able to kind of lay that out on the table. And that's very hard for a lot of people. And I
Hmm.
think if you hold back on that, people can see through that, and there's not transparency and trust in all that. And the more you can build off of those two words, I think the farther you can go as a leader.
You had defined humility a couple of times. Is there an example of humility that you maybe had to go through to sort of learn more about yourself? Because I feel like you hit that spot on. I feel like that word is very important in in dealing with getting to maybe even the top or getting to a leadership role. Do you want to define that a little bit, or maybe provide a scenario?
Yeah, sure. Just don't think you have to know everything. It's very simple. Like, not even in a leadership role, you can lead people without knowing everything that they do. And actually, I didn't believe that early on in my career. I had a president at a previous company tell me, like, I said to him, I said, I don't understand how you can lead people if you don't know every piece of what they do. Because I was a subject matter expert at certain things and I lived and breathed in that world, and I was like, well, how can people tell me what to do if they don't live and breathe what I'm doing? But then as you start going up that corporate ladder, you realize like you just have to know you're really controlling, or not controlling, but you're bouncing off the strengths of people more than the task.
Yeah.
Um, and the task isn't so important as you get more and more leadership and more direct reports will say. It's just knowing how to make people passionate and efficient and effective and want to be there, and all that stuff is way more important than being in the weeds, because you just won't have time to be in the weeds because everyone's looking at visionary things. So being humble is just, it's okay to not know everything, no
Yeah.
matter no
Yeah.
matter what group or people that you're with. And let people know that, because people want to, they want to connect with people that are human and make mistakes.
I personally think that the best way to maybe control a situation is to let go of the control of like you can't go after control of someone else. You simply just have to let them do their own thing, but you have to have your own swing of things as well, and sort of add it on to the management style. How would you
Mhm.
define your management style overall?
Yeah, so I'm not a helicopter mom in that space. I'm not a micromanager, never will be. I don't think it's the path for success anymore. It may have worked probably maybe 20 years ago, but the mindset and the generation changes. They want the bigger picture. So, I mean, to me, you set the expectation, you set the goal, do your deliverable, whatever you're looking for, and then let them find a path. Certainly, there's some things that doesn't work for, like if you're in a repetitious path and you've vetted that this is the best steps to take, you can provide that, but allow people to be innovative in that space as well, to find their own, unique way to do things. I manage through data. And actually, it's so interesting. I used to say that all the time, and I've been correcting myself. I manage through insight. So using data to come up with insights to make sure that everything's going smoothly. Because data is not subjective. It's very easy to hold accountability through metrics and data and KPIs and insight into that data.
Hmm.
And when you kind of set those boundaries and let everyone see the information that everyone's being held to,
Hmm.
it's very powerful to just start competitive nature and everything
Yeah.
starts to grow there. But uh, I think people spend too much time in the subjective space in management, and then that's where people get butthurt very quickly because it's like your view of the situation is not my view of the situation, and
Yeah.
it gets muddy very quickly.
Now, you had explained like a competitive sort of environment between employees. Do you think that lies from insecurities alone?
No, and I'm talking competitive probably in a good sense.
Okay.
More of like, if you're going after a certain revenue goal or now when you're talking the content team, right? That's where it gets a little tricky. I think it's hard not to look at somebody who, let's say two people started at the same time streaming and creating content and then comparing your numbers to them. That's very hard not to do.
Yeah.
Everybody says you're not supposed to do it, but it is really hard.
Absolutely.
Uh, yeah, so you kind of can't get over, and that could be some insecurity, right? Because you're something works for them that's not working for you, and you may
Right.
try to do something similar. To me, it was more in the competitive space of using that as a positive to push teams or push groups of people
Yeah. Yeah.
towards a common goal. But I think I can find that line of like knowing I don't need to be the best, but
Yeah.
also being competitive, but I don't need to degrade other people to step up the ladder. That's never an option for me. And even in
Absolutely.
business, I don't need everything.
Yeah.
I don't need other companies to die for my success. That's stupid. I
Yeah.
think that's really dumb.
Do you have any idols that you sort of look up to in the business realm?
I'm a huge fan of Gary Vee.
Oh, man, we could talk for
Gary,
hours about him.
yeah, I just like his style. I like
Hmm.
his empathetic approach to leadership. I think it's very interesting for me for his age group because he's in the age group really where transparency is tough for some
Yeah.
people in that age group.
Yeah.
But he's very opposite of that, and I like his style. I like that the biggest thing I've taken from him recently, and actually a couple people from Ascension helped me kind of get over this, is like just go for it. Like, don't worry so much about all the negatives because the positives will probably outweigh the negatives in whatever you're doing. Like this podcast, for instance,
Hmm.
I'm crossing both platforms of both my online life versus my actual like career life, real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And with people I know on LinkedIn versus people I know through the community or online or on Twitter. And I'm kind of doing both, and I really don't care because I'm having a really good time with it. And the benefits are just way better if you just kind of let all that scary stuff that you're worried about, those two worlds mixing,
Yeah.
just let it go. And I know you've kind of been going through the same thing because I see like your channel that's based around like your professional career of, of like personal training and,
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. And once you knock those barriers down and realize like it's not going to hurt you because everything you're thinking in your head is way worse than what it's going to be,
Absolutely.
it's pretty powerful.
I sort of put that together whenever you said, I don't want other businesses to die for my own, for my own growth and success. Because Gary Vee
Mm.
actually says that. Let's talk about gaming and streaming for a little bit. I know you don't.
Mm.
I know you don't stream much, but you used to, correct?
I did for 2 years, yeah.
What was your gamer tag, by the way?
So this was actually my name. And
Gotcha.
actually, I everybody thought I was a truck driver because it's kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I got that gamer tag probably when I was like 15. I was
Yeah.
playing some LAN party Halo action where we were all connecting our TVs together in a garage. For everybody who's younger, you're not going to understand
Right.
what
They
any
won't understand it all. I get it though.
before the internet allowed you to play anyone in the world.
Yeah.
You had to play your friends and
Ugh.
connect TVs. Like
What a sad
anyway,
world.
it was pretty awesome though, carrying a
Yeah.
32-inch box TV, not even a flat screen that weighed like 60 pounds in my truck.
The
That was pretty.
CRTs, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just we just connect everything to a router, not like the router you have now, but kind of similar. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was playing some people in Halo, and this kid kept absolutely crushing me from high school, and he kept yelling "Haul Daat" at me when he killed me. So then I went home and practiced, and I
Yeah.
came back and made my gamer tag that, and then I beat him with his own.
I was gonna ask. I was gonna say, did you crush him? Because
Yeah, I
that guy
did.
deserved it.
Luckily, and then I kept the name ever since I was 15. So
Man, you not only stole his dignity, but you stole his words too.
Yeah, I did. I was really angry. I'm not a good loser at
All a
times.
man's got is his words. You're
It was
stripping
pretty
it.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, and I did the whole truck thing just because I'm a big truck person, and then
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it was on Fiverr. The guy made the logo, and everybody then
Nice.
thought I was a truck driver. So that's kind of where all that came from.
Gotcha. So never drove trucks for a living.
No, I
Yeah.
love big trucks and I love
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, but like I play a ton of snow runner and farming sim, so it's all kind of the same stuff. But no,
Yeah.
never drove truck all over the country. Not saying I wouldn't. I think it'd be awesome, but just podcasts all day in your ear and just cranking miles. So I could get down with that. I've done a
Honestly.
lot of driving with my previous job,
Yeah.
like all over the country, 17-hour stints, things like that. So I've done it, but not in a big rig, like in a vehicle.
So speaking of your favorite game, Farming Sim,
Mm.
right?
It's up there for
Yeah.
sure.
The objective for me was to just have fun with it and like throw everything in the water. Like that was my style of Farming Sim. What about that game it's stimulating to you?
Tasks.
Yeah.
I love completing tasks. So open world games are a struggle for me because anything's possible. Linear progression for me is like where my mind sits. I'm a planner by trade, a planner by life.
Hmm.
So my day, even my day to day, consists of an email to myself that has my to do list that I have to do for tomorrow. So before I
Yeah.
go to bed, I send myself an email and it has everything I want to accomplish tomorrow.
So you need things
So
like laid out in front of you.
yeah, so
Yeah.
gaming for me, farming sim is just doing activities, and people will be like, why would you want to do chores in a game for some reason like that? Jordy and I built like a 15, I think when we sold everything in farming sim 19, because we decided to sell our entire farm before just to see how much it was worth. And
Yeah.
I think we made like $16.5 million is how much our farm was worth at the end.
God.
And you start with zero. So
Yeah.
like if you think about how, and you were in it, you've
Yeah.
played it, you have to do a lot of things right
Oh my
and a
God.
lot of things consistently. And part of farming sim, which is what the difficult part for you was like you kind of have to know your way around equipment. Like you have to know what a front loader attachment, because you'll buy things that you can't even use with certain tractors and you're going to be frustrated. So there's some of
Yeah.
that. Like I know farming stuff. I like construction equipment and things like that. So I have a lot of knowledge in that already.
Sure.
And if you don't, it can be absolutely infuriating because you're having to do a lot of research on just how to hook up the trailer.
I couldn't even I couldn't even hook up something to like either the back or the front of the trailer. Like
Yeah.
some things go to the front, some things go to the back, and it just
Yes.
confused me. It's just
Yeah, no, for sure. If you don't have a knowledge of that world, that game it's like Sims for construction and farming people.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
So anything is possible. And I bought the Farming Sim 22 just came out in November of last year, and I
Okay.
bought it on the PC this time because the mods are insane on the computer.
Yeah.
Like people, the things that people put together are incredible. I mean, it's really fun. So I'm
Yeah.
digging into it pretty deep right now.
Nice. So you're like in the midst of currently playing it.
Yeah, 22. I'm all in it. I'm actually trying to get the farm built up. So when Jordy finally, I know he's in the midst of moving, and I think he's fully moved, but his computer's still in a box somewhere. So once he gets that up and running, gets settled, I want to have the farm in a good place that we can buy cows and animals, and because that's what he likes to take care of.
Nice. You'd consider you and Jordy like a duo when it comes to taking care of you take care of the lawn, he takes care of the animals.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. I take care of all the field work, and he was taking care of, I don't know, we had like 300 cattle and like 50 pigs. So feeding them, cleaning up water. I mean, it's just a constant rotation of things to do.
They say every relationship takes compromise, so I'm glad you guys are stepping up to it.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it. No, it's so funny. And the people, like when I tell people at work or people in my day-to-day life that I like my downtime is playing, right? Playing a
Mhm.
farmer.
Mhm.
They think I'm insane, but to each their own, I guess.
I mean, I think even the layman person who doesn't understand video games definitely isn't going to understand that at all. But like, I get it. When I was playing Farming Sim myself, when I was actually doing proper things and cutting the grass, like it was actually thoroughly relaxing.
Yeah, it's therapeutic for sure.
And I would honestly, when I was streaming it, you can't be like super relaxed when you're playing it because you're trying to manage stream and everything. But when I play it off stream, I would just pop on some music and honestly just cut the grass, and that was, like you said, therapeutic for sure.
Yeah. I listened to books. Actually, I listened to an audiobook
Oh
last
yeah,
Friday. I was like 2 hours on farming sim. I'm just obviously taking care of the crops, but like you don't have to be so immersed. And it's like
yeah,
such a nice change of pace to like the competitive PvP, constant
yeah,
like stress, right? Like even when you play, Warzone, Overwatch, whatever you're into, it's like you got to be in it, you're immersed, your headphones got to be jacked up so you hear people walking behind you. Like
yeah.
this, you can just throw it on and just chill.
Speaking of competitive games, are there any competitive games that you like to play?
Battlefield,
Hmm.
and it's huge bone of contention, I guess, with the Battlefield community right now. Everyone hates the new one. I like it. I
Oh,
don't have any
okay.
problems with it. I think 2042, I think it's a good game. Everybody's, I don't know, getting bent out of shape, I think, for a whole lot of nothing, but that's just me.
Hmm.
So, big Battlefield player. I love Overwatch. I played Overwatch for years, and I'd say that's probably one of the best competitive games ever created. If you haven't ever played, not many people have not played at least a little bit of it.
Yeah,
It's excellent. So I mean, it's crazy that that many people still play a game that's what, like 6, 7 years old now.
they continually update it though, correct? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they changed the meta. I mean, I guess when did the word meta become like a thing? Like I'm trying to think back because like I didn't really learn about metas, right? So the meta of like this weapon is the meta, or
Yeah.
this Overwatch character or combo of characters is the meta. Like when did that happen? Because
Uh,
it didn't exist 5 years ago.
yeah, no. I have not a clue. These words are just like, I feel like a grandpa when it comes to all this like technical terms and meta
Right.
and like any of these gaming terms that people use, or even the terms on TikTok that I see from time to time. I'm just like, what was that word that I just what I don't know what that is.
Like vibe right now is like the word for everyone. Like when
Yeah,
did that actually become like an environmental feeling? But like meta's soon to be a VR, AR like phenomenon that'll probably
yeah,
change our life for the rest of time.
yeah,
But like it started out as like a concept of this game is in a specific state,
yeah,
that these things are the best during that state. It blows my mind. I wish I
yeah.
could find out who comes up with these words.
Right. I mean, it's probably some 35-year-old man who lives in his mom's basement or something like that.
Somebody with some sort of poll that probably used that word in a certain way during some sort of content or
Yeah.
something, and then it just starts, reciprocating and infecting everyone. There's lots of bad infections right now. We'll at least go with a good one with word choices, word
Yeah.
usage.
So you had explained Overwatch and Farming Sim. Is there any other games that you like to kick back to?
Simulators probably, if I'm going to kick back and relax, it's going to be simulators in some form, whether it's farming. I did like a trucker simulator for a while. I like SnowRunner as well. That's more of like an off-road tasky, deliver equipment or materials.
Oh,
So if
okay.
I'm going to relax, those are the kind of games I play.
Yeah.
If I feel like getting sweaty, then it's usually Battlefield. I'm not a Warzone guy. Apex, I just can't wrap my head around all the different ammo. The competitive piece of that is probably either Overwatch or Battlefield for me. I love Battlefield. I've always loved it. Online play just mostly is gross most of the time, so a lot of that I
Yeah.
don't find funny. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen the funniest things to me are like some people's gamer tags. Like some of them are just unbelievable. For instance, Rambro, I was a big fan of that. Swim Jock 94 I thought was just epically hilarious for just so many
Why
reasons.
would you make that as it's just like, why? Where did you
I
where did you come
I
up with that?
I know that swimmers technically are sports athletes. I actually swim as well, but like
Mm,
I've never seen people refer to swimmers as jocks. And then to put 94 as I'm assuming the year this person was born,
yeah.
I just found hilarious. I rock, and that's IROKRL as in Ralph Lauren polos with a Z. I thought was amazing. Whoever made that, like, props to you
Oh,
that
jeez.
you're so into Ralph Lauren polos,
Yeah.
because I remember a day, probably early 2000s, when it was cool to wear multiple RL polos and pull the collar up. So you
Yeah.
had like 3 or 2 layers of popped collar. I mean,
Yo.
just epic stuff there. It made me so happy. So I get more amusement out of that kind of stuff than I
Yeah.
do people being ignorant assholes.
What about the worst game that you've ever played?
It would probably have to be something like open world that I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go
Mm.
ahead and give this a try because I'm a different person now, and I think I can figure this out. And then I get in and I'm like, I don't even know where to go. Like things that are
Yeah.
killing me are like like tiny spiders because I don't have some sort of antigen that everyone has that I can't
Yeah.
wrap my head around. Like the most open world game I ever played, I think was like Fallout 4, which I
Okay.
did pretty decent at that, but I also was playing with friends, so like they guided me through how to find things.
Yeah.
I like the concept of like quest types things, but like open world for me is like Assassin's Creed because it's still extremely linear and it's very repetitive, which
Yeah.
I'm okay with. Most people hate, I
Yeah.
feel, but it gives me comfort. That's about as open worldy as I can get. It's probably like the Assassin's Creed genre.
Open world games in general are probably like on the worst side of the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that because they're bad games.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
awful.
I mean, like you said, you're very task based. Like you
Yeah.
literally write a plan to yourself the day before, which I think is a great idea, by the way. And
Yeah.
like you're set up. You know, that's how you want to live your life.
I love checking things off, man.
I think that goes into the whole what makes a great leader. I think that that planning is definitely one of those things that is definitely up there for making, uh, you know, let alone not just a great leader, but just a content creation organization in general that you did.
Mm.
And I think it all starts with planning. So speaking of more about the content creation group Ascension that you had built,
Mhm.
how long would you say it took until you started to see substantial growth?
I'll tell you the point where it made me smile. I wouldn't say we're substantial. I don't want anybody. I mean, you're on the team. I don't want anybody to take it that in a bad way, because I love everybody that's on the team. But it's more a moment that made me smile was early on. We would recruit people, like reach out to people of creators that we knew or didn't know, and just say, "Hey, are you interested in an interview? Are you interested in joining an organization?" Now, early on, it was awful because remember, it was right off the back of all that terrible shit that went down. And the Stream Team name was an awful, awful name. It was tied to really terrible things and terrible people.
Uh,
Which is why I chose the word organization because it's not Stream Team. Stream Team is not organized in my eyes. It's just a group of people getting together to play games.
mhm.
An organization has to have rules and process and values and all that stuff. So I tried to choose a word that separated us from the rest of the people
Yeah.
or groups. It was horrible at the beginning. Everyone pretty much said no, like stream teams are awful, they're terrible
Yeah.
people, and nobody gives a shit about anybody else. And then I would say maybe 6 months ago, not even maybe 6 months ago,
Yeah.
she mentioned in one of our weekly meetings that the tone changed. You know that when you start getting some recognition when people are actually asking us instead of us having to ask everyone
Yeah.
to be a part of the group. And that's really, I knew the day was coming. I just didn't know when. I kept telling everyone, like, just keep pushing, keep doing our process, keep doing the same thing. Like, it'll get easier once people realize, like, truly what we're about.
Yeah.
And we're getting into that space where people are actually reaching out and saying, hey, like, looks like you're doing things that I would really be interested in. And that makes me smile because it gives you validation of like the process and the grind at the beginning. And so not having to
Absolutely.
hear no's, we still hear no's, which I'm totally cool with,
Yeah.
but it's also the side of things when people are actually interested in what we're doing.
How long ago was your decision to sort of create this group?
Oh, we started, oh my gosh, what was the EST date? Like 6/15/20, I think was the initiation date of when this whole is the Discord message of like, hey, you interested in this? A couple of us that are in the team were part of another team that was trying to create themselves
Okay.
early on. But anyway, it didn't work out. The visions were not exactly where I wanted think things should have went from my perspective of
Mhm.
being a part of this group. So I just kind of bailed out. And then probably about a month or 2 months later, I was like, maybe I can just do this myself and
Yeah.
then start it from scratch. So, I think most of that shit dropped February 2020 when all the growth stuff came out.
Yeah.
And then we were established in June. So, it's, 2, 3, 4 months later.
And I think I joined in October. So
Mhm.
I didn't think that I was like right at the beginning of this whole thing. I
Mm.
thought it was going back a while because when I joined, it seemed it was still tiny,
Mhm.
but it seemed like there was a lot of organization. And it
That's what
seemed
everybody says.
yeah, yeah, and like there were rules laid out, and it just seemed like all that stuff should have taken longer than it did. So I applaud you and I applaud everyone who was like on the back end of things when it comes
Mhm.
down to it. The more people who join your team, like you said, people are reaching out to you now. I think that has to do not only because you're such an organized organization, but because there's so many referrals. There's so many people in there that so many people, like so many of the content creators, are reaching out to other content creators now and saying, "Hey, join this team. It's been good for me. It might be good for you."
That gives me goosebumps, actually. And the reason it does is because referral base is the best possible thing any organization could ask for, because that means the people in it are happy enough to bring their
Any
friends.
any
Yeah,
sort
you're
of
not
like
going.
sales aspect, yeah.
Yeah, correct. And whether it's a business or whether it's, a content team, if you can get the people inside the group wanting to bring their friends, that means they're happy enough to want to put, you're not going to drag people into something that's terrible. That just doesn't happen. What's really cool is now there's even people on the team that will filter through their connections or network, right? They'll say like, "Hey, this person reached out, they're interested. They said they know you." And then we'll talk to that person on the team and they'll say, "I didn't bring their name up because I'm not sure they align with what we're about." Like, that's beautiful
Yeah.
because everybody is very clear at the type of people
Right.
we're looking for,
Right.
the type of balance, the ecosystem that we've created,
Yeah.
and everybody's monitoring themselves and their communities of who's a good fit and who's not. Not that we don't want to be inclusive to people,
For
but
sure.
listen, we're not here for the drama. We're not here for all the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And to have everyone policing that where it's not, and that's where it's so funny when I see organizations or even like community leaders or creators that have a community and like their community is like a cesspool and they're just like
Yeah.
just drama all the time online, on Twitter, blah blah blah. And it's like it starts with you. Like,
Right.
set the rules, set the expectations. And they're like, "I don't have time to control everyone." Like, you don't have to control everyone. You just have to set the expectation and the accountability that like this is how we're gonna act.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't work for you, then you're just not going to be a part of the group.
Right.
But you have to set that tone very early on. And I think that's why we didn't really bring anyone on as a creator for probably a couple months, because we did a lot of, like you said, process, laying out actual paperwork, how we're going to recruit people, what does the interview look like, how are we going to get rid of people, what are the rules, what is the Discord layout like. Those were all the very early documentation that we had to put together and approve as a group to say, what board positions do we need? How do we make it? Why would people join? Like, so think about that. Why
Yeah.
would people join a group? What are they looking for? Looking not only for community, but personal growth, content growth in their own stuff that they're doing. So we had to think through that and how we'd be creative. And we're constantly having to do that. That's the hard part, is staying ahead of
Yeah.
the content team, because you guys are out there just slaying it. So we got to stay on our toes.
Do you want to explain? I think a dip, right? DIIP.
Mhm.
Do you want to explain
Yep.
that a little bit?
So when we're talking about a value-based group, which is what I wanted to do from the very beginning, because none of that exists right now. Everybody's just creating community to get to the most views, the most followers as fast as they can. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to pick the right people to have the right community so that we don't have all the drama that comes with it. Like, the numbers really aren't important to me. The organization and the feel of the group is more important than the numbers.
Yeah.
Because the numbers will come. People
Right.
who don't want to associate with the negative or the toxic environment, they'll lean towards what we're doing. So DIP is diversity, inclusion, innovation, and professionalism. So DIIP is our values. I wanted to make it super simple that everyone could remember except for Jordy.
I was
Because
just about to mention him.
yeah, great person. Anyway, he screwed up once and he's got it right every other time. So we joke about it in the team, but
He won't
he
ever
does a
screw
good
up
job.
again.
Yeah. So diversity, inclusion, innovation, and professionalism. I chose those values. One, diversity is a bigger word than just people looking different. So diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of platform, diversity of content, like all of that goes into this. Inclusivity being the second piece, that everyone feels included. You're not ever going to be able to be perfect here, but we can create a space where most people feel like, they can bring things up, because you can't innovate if you don't have those first two, the diversity and inclusion. Like, I can't say juicy today for 8 hours, I just want you to go innovate. Like, that doesn't happen. It's natural, it's organic. Innovation happens organically, and it happens when people feel included, feel safe, and they feel like the ideas they bring forward, even if they're not perfect, are okay.
Yeah.
And they're going to get molded with a team environment. Innovation and being creative is like really important. And the P being professionalism, To me, it's important because I don't spend a lot of time if I go into someone's content and it's just like I'm a huge fan of swearing, but if it's just like F this, F that, and like I can't get down with that. It's just
Yeah.
not really in my headspace.
Yeah.
People make tons of money and have tons of views by being a crazy toxic person. Like that's an avenue some people want to go.
Yeah.
It's just not the avenue for me.
So I noticed not only do you have an acronym for the group, but you also have an acronym for your name. I noticed that last night when I went on Twitter. I wanted to make sure I spelled your name correctly. So embarrassingly, I went on Twitter to check out the spelling of your name.
That's okay.
But I ended up finding out a little more and saw that Haul is actually an acronym. What does it stand for?
Yeah, that's actually recent. It's recent because, well, with my review videos, I try to be as honest and unique and all inclusive as I can. So that's the HAU. For instance, some of my best videos on my YouTube are around like vacation places that we go. So we do a bunch of traveling throughout the year, whether it's for work or for personal. But I try to think of the things that I would want to know when I'm going to like a resort or a vacation spot or a hotel or whatever, and then cover those pieces. So the all-inclusive piece for me is really important because I get a lot of feedback on the videos of that have decent numbers that are like, you like covered everything, like anything I could. Like I get weird with like, for instance, we were in Cancun, we were at a hotel and we took a ferry across to a different island. Found out through the grapevine you could get free ferry tickets at the front desk, which you normally like $45. Like that's a big deal. People should know about that.
Yeah.
But like most people don't cover that because they're more worried about their blog experience of them being on camera. Like to me, it's not about me being on camera. It's about all the information that I want somebody traveling there to know because it saves them money and saves them time. Because me, as an efficient person, I want to save money, save time, and know about most things so I don't get myself in a situation I don't want to be in. Not from a like worried about crime or anything, but just like, oh crap, I took the wrong boat or the wrong whatever. So the all-inclusive piece is really important for me from the review standpoint because I do reviews based on things that are important to me. Like I did one on my truck. It wasn't specs. It wasn't all this, all this stuff because I'm not a mechanic. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I'm in aesthetically and the things that are important to me. So the whole thing originally just obviously was the first part of my gamer tag, and then I was kind of looking for an acronym that I could use on my YouTube stuff, and then I kind of came up with that for my reviews. So that's really where and the L being leadership, just because I have a huge passion for leadership. It's pretty much what I do all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. The leader of an organization, and then of course like managing leadership at work as well. Does your personal life involve any leadership, or because some people like are flip of the switch, like sometimes at business they're a leader and then at home, how do you relax, like how do you turn off? Is there a turn off for you?
Gaming. Yeah, and really leadership's relaxing to me.
I get you.
I don't get frazzled by like really difficult conversations. That's another thing that I think leaders struggle with. And if you can't be the one that swings the sword, I'll say, in Game of Thrones reference, it's hard if you're making other people do that kind of stuff. Like if you're not the one having the difficult conversation, like hey, 5 things at work going on, and I know 2 people aren't getting along, I'm the one that's bringing them into a conference room and we're like, all right, let's figure this out. I like that stuff. I don't like telling people things they don't want to hear, but I also know it's for the betterment of the group. So I like being the one that leans in. I call it leaning into discomfort because it's kind of what you're doing. You're like, yo, please come along so we can talk about this.
Yeah.
I certainly don't like making people feel bad, but accountability is huge. And if you don't take care of it, it will, it'll make other people that are high performers be like, why am I trying so hard? Because this person's just allowed to do whatever they want. You got to cut that out.
Obviously, being a leader, you definitely have a form of emotional awareness.
Yeah, I mean, anything's difficult. They're all going to be hard in a different way. But I would say whenever to prep for them, and the way I prep for them is you have to have an extreme amount of empathy walking into that. I don't care how pissed you are about the situation or what you're having to deal with, because I get in the headspace sometimes too. I'm like, can people just relax and coexist? But they can't sometimes. So when you're going into that, realize that the other person is going to be very upset about the conversation. And so you have to even kind of script it in your head and think about the situations before you just dive in and bring the person in, because it's going to get emotional. You have to stay pretty steady in your own emotions. That's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan did a really awesome YouTube video on how he stays so calm, even like during his podcast, on how he stays level when somebody's, at him, and he just kind of motors through the conversation. And if you can stay calm, the person will calm down that's on the other side that's really upset. So that's a skill that takes time to learn. It took me a long time to learn as well, because I haven't always been this way in the sense of being able to handle those types of situations. My first 5, 6 reviews from my first career, right out of college, the first 5 reviews, I remember my boss telling me, like, you can't talk to people that way. That was my review. I got all good marks except for, like, you can't tell people that, like, they're wrong the way you do. Like, you have to sort out, like, how you evolve and how you communicate, in the sense, because I would get very frustrated because I would see a problem coming, and I'd have the solution that you have to do now so it doesn't cause that problem, and people were not listening, and I'd be like, stop being dumb. Like, just do this now, and then you don't have the problem. They wouldn't do it, then the problem would come, and then it's like, it doesn't help anyone that, like, whether you're right now or right later. But
Yeah.
there's a tactfulness to deal with people, and if you lead with empathy, like Gary Vee says all the time, it does work. It'll work out if you actually care about the person across the table.
You had said you speak with empathy.
Mhm.
How do you explain empathy versus compassion?
Oh man, that's deep. I don't even know if I can answer that, because I mean, to me, compassion's just feeling bad for a situation or a person, I guess.
Maybe feeling
Empathy,
sympathetic.
yeah, and I guess empathy is an action in that space, maybe. I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not even sure I know the definition between the two personally. I certainly don't know everything, but to me, empathy is an actionable feeling in the space of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Compassion is just feeling sorry for a situation or a person's situation, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. Juicy,
I
that's a
mean,
really good question. What's
the
your thoughts?
yeah. I mean, the way that I see it is when you spoke about speaking to people with empathy, it's definitely a good management tactic to do, because if you speak to people and you listen with compassion, you're therefore putting their feelings in on you. And like you said, how Joe Rogan stays calm, and maybe even how you stay calm, the way to do that is to speak through an empathetic voice where you're not inputting their feelings into you. And that's when compassion comes into play, is whenever you start to feel sympathetic, you feel drained after the conversation, and you'll know when you have a conversation with someone whether you went through empathy or compassion, because you'll know your energy levels afterward. If you feel completely drained, you most likely went in with compassion. But I like how you said that you went in with empathy, because like that's a really good management tactic to do.
Yeah, that's really good around the energy stuff. Actually, my wife and I talk about that quite a bit, because she takes on other people's energy, and you're right, it absolutely drains her.
Yeah.
I'm not that type of person. I don't get that transfer of energy very
Yeah.
much in that space. So I don't get drained by people. I get drained by a situation in the sense of, like, it being loud. If there's a lot going on, I'm not a concert person. I'm not a big venue person. I get, very skittish and nervous and drained in those situations. If I'm at, like, a Christmas party, I can last like an hour, and then I'm like, holy crap, like, I need to, like, go sit in a hallway. But I can go 10 hours a day in a management setting all day long and feed off of that energy. But then when I get home, it's like I need to sleep. One thing I wanted to touch on there. So
Yeah.
radical candor, if you've never read that book or looked up that word, look it up. Radical candor is an approach to a conversation so most people think brutal honesty is a positive thing. The construction industry is rife with it, where it's like, I'm just being brutally honest. Like, that's me being transparent to you, and that's a good thing. It is a good thing, but the problem is, brutal honesty means that you're being transparent and honest with someone without giving one shit about the way they're going to take it.
Yeah.
That's not good. Radical candor is being transparent, but considering how the person's going to receive the information. For instance, if you're like, you're not performing, like, pick it up, these are the things you're terrible at, someone's not going to receive that well. It needs to be like, hey, these are the areas you need to work on. Let's look at this program to possibly bring your skill set up so that, you don't get left behind.
When you speak to someone else about brutal honesty towards them, you're speaking from your own point of view, and how
Hmm.
basically like the way people converse is like, if I speak to someone else, I'm projecting the way that I want to project, not the
Hmm.
way that this person wants me to project. And the same thing with like listening and providing maybe guidance or advice. Like, I'm projecting my guidance towards this person, not what this person wants projected towards them. And like that separation is the difference.
Just styles in general, man. There's tons of them. Whether there's one way, one right way or not, I still haven't sorted that out. Realize that you're not gonna most of the time ever change someone's opinion,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, a huge one right now with all the crap that's going on in the world. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't get too wrapped around things like that.
Sometimes the best way to control a situation is to completely like throw in the towel and say, you know what, I'm going to conform to the things that you want rather than the things that I want. And like, you can't control a situation when you have the control within yourself, but you can control the situation when you have control of the room and you're actually like being an empathetic ear, like we spoke about, and
Yeah,
you're not taking in those feelings.
it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
Like, let's get back in that space. It is 100% okay for you and your neighbor or your family member to not agree on a controversial topic. That's 100% okay, and you can coexist. It's
Yeah.
fine.
I think that people struggle with that though. You know,
I know.
the whole fact of, if you don't agree with the way that I want to live my life, um, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's tore apart families over the last, what, 2 years?
Yeah, I feel like communication definitely needs the things that we spoke about today with like talking with empathy. I definitely think that more people need to do that outside of a role, like even in casual conversation.
Hmm.
Because I'll even catch myself in casual conversation, maybe listening with a compassionate ear and sympathetic, and I don't want to do that. Like, even in casual conversation, I just want to be able to listen like I was listening to, you know, your stories right now. It's like I want to be able to do that. I think that more people need to be able to conform.
Hmm.
Going back to Ascension again, favorite Ascension member. Okay, we'll skip that question. I was
That
just
is totally unfair, and you know it.
just say yourself. Just that's
I will
all.
not say that either. The logo, I love the logo.
Favorite thing about their growth of Ascension that you've seen.
I would say the collaboration. It's my favorite thing right now. I mentioned it in the meeting, I think this week and the week before. Like, seeing everybody kind of doing things together, like
Yeah,
creating projects together, I think is pretty awesome. Like this, like Coder and I doing the podcast,
yeah,
the Basement Barcade podcast,
yeah.
the oh my gosh, how am I blanking on Miles and Xena's
Joysticks.
podcast? Yes, thank you. Good
Yeah,
Lord. Joysticks United. And then like YouTube endeavors and just people. It's all good. It's amazing.
the whole collaboration. I agree that we're all basically like a second family, and I like to see that. Like those are where my values are in my own family, and to see that I potentially have a second one where people can just support to support, and I could go support just to support, not a whole follow for follow thing, not a whole support for support thing, but support from a friendship aspect, or you know, from a loving aspect, from a caring aspect. Like, we actually thoroughly care about each other.
The goal is always organic, right? That's the word that everybody uses, the organic growth, organic whatever. The follow for follow doesn't work. So that's
Yeah.
why early on when we talked about rules, there was never rules around the stream, the amount you create content, or you having to rate someone else. Like that, it's one of the things we say in the interview all the time. It's like there's no rules with what or who or what you're doing with your content, because like it has to be natural for the people just to get along and coexist and then start working with each other. And when that happens, which is what's happening now, like it's unstoppable, because you're right, people actually care
Mm-hmm.
about each other's content and success, versus like, oh, I got to hit my quote of rating 3 Ascension members this week. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
work.
There's no sense of care there. Whenever you
Right.
say, look, you got to do this, you got to raid these, you know, people are just doing it because it's a task. They're not doing it because they actually want to. They're doing it because
Correct.
they feel they need to. And that's
Yep.
the difference.
The only thing that frustrates me so far is what we're doing and nobody knows about it besides our tiny little community and our group of people. Like, if people could actually look and see at the process
Do you
and what
mean
we're building,
people outside of the organization?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean like big people,
Ah,
because what we're doing is impressive without any capital money at all. People are just donating their time, which is the most important thing any of us could actually do,
yeah.
is give our time up, because it's something you can't buy or ever get back. So we're doing that with zero money being made. People just give a shit about the group. Every organization is dying to have that,
Yeah.
and we have it organically with very little rules and very little like monitoring. It's just everybody understands that you see something, you say something, like that's actually working.
Yeah.
And there's organizations that would pay millions of dollars for that to actually happen inside of their group. We have very specific values as a group,
Yeah.
and then everything else just happens.
And like you can't even put a price on that.
No,
Because
exactly.
even if you paid that money, it would again be people doing it because it feels like a need more than a want. It's good to start from the ground up in the proper way. The beginning portions of getting this together, would you say that's more important than the growth of today?
Yeah, I mean, the rules, right? The key for me was all the background work. So I spent a lot of days just putting thoughts on paper, like the spreadsheet that we score people on, like that was created on probably like June 30th. So like 15 days in this entire thing,
Yeah.
like just spitballing with the team and in my head to bounce ideas off and come up with like what good looks like. And then putting process down, right? So from really, it was coming at this organization from a business perspective. What do businesses need to survive? Because this is what this is going to be. Because like when you said, I mean, you only came out in October, but your interview looked exactly the same as probably the first person who was interviewed to be a creator. All of that legwork was done before we talked to a single person, because that was important to me to not look. We had to not look like stream teams. And stream team interviews, and I've only been in one, I think, prior. I just knew what regular interviews look like, which is
Yeah.
what I really wanted to look like.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be organized. I wanted to have email invites. I wanted to be, Discord being our main communication tool. When we say we're going to reach out to somebody, make sure we do follow up. Like all that had to be on point, because we can't be associated with disorganization, because then people aren't going to take us seriously. So all of that legwork we did on the front end was really to set up that when someone was contacted, it was a different experience than, hey, Joe, Bob from whatever team, like you want to come hang out and play whatever, because we're a bunch of guys and gals that get together to play on Friday nights. Like I didn't want it to be that. It had to be more than that, which is what the feel and the feedback we get, I think, a lot now is like, whoa, like I'm nervous walking into this, because like this is the process. This is who you're interviewing with. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's all important, because then that protects the entity, which is the logo, which is the entire team, from the wrong individuals getting into the group.
Sort of gives new perspective members a good look at the team based off of the interview alone. Like that's their first 10 seconds with everyone who does the interview, and they say that the first 10 seconds is sort of all you need until you start to make a first impression of someone. So I mean, that has to be clear, that has to be set. I think that was a correct decision to start with the interview and to make sure that that's like where people see first.
Yeah, and like I said, it was around the numbers. The numbers weren't important. It's the people in the group that are important, which is why 50% of the interview is really around content, and the other 50% is around the human being, because the human being's more important than really the content. Can grow into anything. Look at all the different ways people have changed just from being in a group, right? Miles was on Twitch, is now on YouTube, fully on YouTube, making YouTube videos, doing podcasts. Perfect example of branching out inside of the group. So the content's just, we're finding to make sure it's something they really want to do long term, because better than anybody. There's some of this shit sucks. Sometimes you don't want to get on stream, or sometimes you just don't want to edit the video, because it's all in our spare time. Like most of us are professionals or whatever that looks like. So it's stuff you have to decide that you want to do. So it's making sure there's enough consistency there to warrant being a team member. And that's okay if it changes in the future. We've had plenty of people who said it's just isn't for me. And I did that early on. I created this team because I knew I wasn't the person who wants to be in front of a camera. I was exhausted by streaming. I liked the interaction piece, but at the end of the day, I really didn't. I didn't like being on that long. And when I just didn't have the time, when I would turn the camera on, I was exhausted before I even got started, and people can feel that. I get jazzed up doing things like this or building things like kind of like what we're doing.
You had explained, I mean, similar to this situation with you like turning on the camera and streaming, and then being out in public and maybe going to a Christmas party and being there for about an hour, but you can do sort of this content and content explaining hotels and or lawn equipment, etc. Is there what's the driving force between you being able to do that and you getting drained when you're out in public? Like what's that look like?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe introvert extrovert type situation there. I
Yeah,
know we talked about energy a little bit ago. I don't know a whole lot about that world. My wife
sure.
knows a lot more, and she explains to me. She's like, "This is why you're feeling this way," and I'm like, "Oh gosh," because I can go like I get so jacked up at work when we're like cruising and we're solving problems and people are collabing and like all that stuff. Even in the team, same thing. It gets me jazzed up. But then once I leave work, like if I have to drive somewhere to go pick something up or run an errand, it's like my level like hits reality, and it's like
yeah,
like I'm running on like just energy all day, all day, all day, and then
yeah,
reality hits, and you're like, holy crap! Like that, I can take human interaction like and collaboration to a point, and then it's like I need to literally not talk to somebody for like 4 hours.
yeah.
So yeah, that's just me personally, and I don't know. There's something there, whether that's I don't know what you call it, and there's probably 100 different ways people explain that, but I'm not sure.
Do you feel like a conversation with maybe someone at a party versus conversation with someone at work is much different?
Yeah, I think, and it's the energy, it's the loudness too, like the
Ah,
noises,
mhm.
all of that coming in at once. TV's on, Christmas music's on, kids
The
are running
mind is
around.
everywhere.
Yeah, so I am trying to process all of this
Yeah,
because, like, environmentally, I'm trying to take it all in.
yeah,
Where I think that's where I get like people ask me like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just like."
yeah.
Like I'm never mad at anybody, but I'm the guy sitting in the corner, like just trying to like bring it down.
Yeah, you have your thoughts in the back of your mind, and then you want to have your like foreground thoughts, but you have your background thoughts of everything going on in the room, and then you can't focus on the foreground, which is just casual conversation and or someone asking, "Is everything okay?" Because like everything in the back is like, "Whoa, this is happening, this is happening." So I get it, I get it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dead on.
yeah,
And some people like feed off of that, like people who are like the party people, and I can be a fun time if I'm in that zone where I'm in the right headspace.
hmm
But if I'm not, I'm like the worst party pooper ever. So
it's all right. We're both hitting that old age now.
I am a
What are we at?
grumpy old
Like almost 80. We're close to that.
guy.
If you could write a card for all of the Ascension members as a whole, if it was one sentence to one paragraph, what would it say to everyone who's currently in the group?
Thank you!
Fair enough.
Exclamation point.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because there's just so much going on, like, and the pride, that goes with everything that's going. Like, just putting our logo on the content is like something I never thought would actually happen, right? And we don't even make people do that, but some people
Yeah.
choose to do it. Doesn't even matter if you don't. It's all the things, just associating or saying nice things about the group or referring a friend to the team. Like, that's the nicest thing anyone can do, is saying like, hey, I have a friend that I appreciate in my life that I think would appreciate this community. I wish there was a better word, two words that could go together to show the appreciation, but it's everything underneath those two words.
Any hobbies or motives at this point that you're doing other than content creation organization and your business? Is there anything else outside of that?
No, I mean, besides making YouTube stuff, that's a real big push for me this year. I'm trying to get to the 1,000. Outside of that, it's really just stuff I'm a huge homebody. So
Yeah.
we have just under 7 acres, and I spend a lot of time in the summer mowing and clearing. So I like messing around in the yard, walking the dog, and then besides that, it's really just video games and TV. My wife
Hmm.
and I are big TV people, so
Yeah.
with all the streaming stuff that goes on, I mean, it can keep you busy 24 hours a day. So, and then
Um,
travel. I mean, that's about it.
Travel. Gotcha. How often do you travel?
This year, I have one, two, three. I have 4 trips planned already. We try to do like 4 or 5 trips because my daughter's in college right now. So she's at school. When she went to school, I mean, she goes with us on some of the trips, obviously, like family ones, but we decided to do traveling a lot more. So we're going to Disney this year. We actually got into the Disney Star Wars Hotel in March, the end of March. So we're going down for that. And then just work stuff. I have to travel some cool places for work as well. So we go to those as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, 4 to 5 trips that we try to do each year. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. Getting there kind of stinks and getting home stinks, but everything in
Yeah.
between. And now doing review videos, like normally I get bored when we're on vacation
Oh,
sometimes because
okay.
I'm like, okay, like I need I can't just like lay by a pool or on a beach for 8 hours a day like some people. Like I'm writing scripts and then I'm getting B-roll and like doing all this stuff, just traveling around the resort or whatever to get the video footage
Hmm.
and then putting the marks down on a Word document. Like I love that. So it brings the tasks back into just relaxing because I
Yeah.
really I
Yeah.
can't relax sometimes. So
No, that's fair. I mean, like you said, your sense of relaxing is providing that sort of like guidance and help
it's
and
so
like
stupid.
no. It's I mean it's just you, you know. There's nothing there's nothing stupid about it. It's just a particular person engaging in an activity that might not be relaxing to some people, but it's like what you love to do, you know.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah,
No, it's really enjoyable. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do, but I actually look forward to doing all of that stuff while like people are taking naps or they're
yeah.
whatever laying out by the pool. I'm running around like with my GoPro, like getting in trouble.
Is there an area of the world that you wouldn't mow grass in if grass was present?
Yeah, so anybody who doesn't know, I'm a huge fan of mowing my lawn. I love all things mowing. Where I wouldn't wet. I hate mowing wet ground.
Uh
It's
huh.
awful. Usually gouging the yard,
Yeah.
and I don't like I don't like when my yard's not in good condition. So I don't like mowing when it's wet. But
Hmm.
sometimes you have to, or it's going to be too long.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. Is there any other? Do you like doing all yard work or is it just mowing?
No, I enjoy most of it. Weeding kind of sucks, but it is what it is. We don't have a whole lot of weeding to do, but I was chopping some logs not too long. I got a brand new axe. I was so pumped. I got it all set up, came down, and it nicked off the log and cut right into my knee,
No
right to the
way.
left of my right kneecap. And so like I dropped the axe, I grabbed my leg and like closed it because I didn't know how bad it was. And I was like, oh my God, like is this really happening right now? Luckily my wife didn't have her headphones on, so I'm like yelling for her and I didn't know how bad it was because I kept it pinched closed and she was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I cut my leg. She's like, how bad? I'm like, I have no idea.
Uh huh.
So I jump in the car, we head down to the urgent care and like it went all the way. It's pretty
No
much the
way.
bone. But I missed all ligaments and like missed my knee. It was like the perfect spot.
Whew.
It wasn't crazy big. It was probably only like that much, but it was you could see it
Uh
makes me
huh.
want to yak. You
Uh
could
huh.
see all the way down, and the guy was like, "Holy crap!" So he stitched me back up. He's like, "I can't believe you missed like everything." But so
Yeah.
now I went and bought an actual chainsaw so that I'm not putting a hatchet. And Jordy makes fun of me because Jordy is like the master of cutting wood. And his recent post, I guess, in his new house, he has like a wood burning stove, so he has like this giant pile of logs. But he's a way better
Oh.
axeman than I will ever be. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't
Well,
get too funky in that world, but no, I love plowing snow. Big fan of that. Just moving dirt, all kinds of fun, stupid stuff.
the safer stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it that. Just don't put an axe in my hand. I can't.
Yeah, it's just avoid the danger. You know,
Yeah,
a snowmobile that works.
yeah, I don't know what I was doing. I can't believe I did it. So now
Well,
I
I mean,
mostly use hatchets. When
yeah,
I have to split wood for like the fire, we have like a fire pit and stuff. I
yeah.
use a hatchet and then I use like the safe way where you put the hatchet against the wood and you like tap it on something hard. And I actually went out and bought a motorized wood splitter. So my
Oh,
wife's
there you
like,
go.
do not pick up an axe again. So I went and bought a wood splitter that can just put the logs in and it splits it for me. So
Yeah, there you
I
go.
wanted to
Okay.
be really cool and tough and realized that I'm not that person.
Like you said earlier, you have your strengths, and stick with those.
Weakness is being sharp objects. Don't go camping with Haul. That's the moral of the story.
Back to motives in life.
Mm-hmm.
What drives you as a person?
Success. I don't know if there's ever going to be a limit of that. I'm in a different headspace now in the sense of just trying to help people find careers, help people change careers or change jobs as well, because I have a lot of experience with interviewing and what a good interview should look like and how to not need to use recruiters. I like that. I like talking to high schools and colleges about leadership and business and all that kind of stuff. So all that stuff really kind of gets my goat. And then also the podcast. I didn't think I'd love it as much as I do, but talking to people in business and just topics that I like to talk about. Huge fan of that. So that's really motives for me right now. That's kind of success for me. Whether it goes anywhere, I kind of don't care because I'm doing things I never thought I'd be able to do. Like I got invited to go talk to a local college around me about leadership in general, like that kind of stuff I absolutely love. And that all came through a LinkedIn connection that I never even thought would ever turn into something like that. So putting yourself out there, you don't know how people are going to connect with that. That is all vitally important. And whether it's your content world or your real world or whether they're both the same thing, it doesn't really matter. But being nice to people and putting yourself out there and your skills, it'll get picked up in the ether and it'll benefit you in the long run.
With your LinkedIn connection, did that have to do with you posting your YouTube videos and then someone saw you in the content creation realm and then they said,
no, maybe. I'm not sure actually. It was a friend from high school that I probably haven't talked to in, oh my gosh, since high school.
Yeah.
Since graduation. We've been connected on LinkedIn for probably years and just, I've been more aggressive in tying my content world to my real life. So I actually have my YouTube on my LinkedIn now. I have the podcast on on my LinkedIn because I never crossed those worlds.
Yeah.
But this one, somebody she worked with posted something on LinkedIn about looking for guests to come into his class at the university to speak on like night classes on leadership or whatever. And she actually sent that post to me on LinkedIn. I haven't talked to her, like I said, in forever. And it was just one of those things where my online persona on LinkedIn dictates my leadership style. And she saw that as an opportunity to help a friend. Like that's kind of gives you validation of what you're trying to do online to make sure that what you're putting out there is what you want, and it can bring opportunity. That was one of those instances where I never would have had opportunity if I wouldn't be kind of throwing it all against the fan and seeing what sticks.
What did that take? Seemed like it was a pretty big jump for you.
It was a huge jump, and mostly it was scary because I wasn't sure how the employees I work with was going to take it. Some people see like making content as like a total waste of time. Now it's mostly just ignorance to it. And I'm realizing that more and more where people are like, I don't understand why you'd spend time doing something that doesn't make you money. And it's more not, if it's not about money, which it is, like certain success of getting to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube is wrapped around like getting monetization. But it really isn't about that. It's just like, this train just keeps rolling where I can help people and like getting comments of like, this review is what I was looking for to figure out if I wanted to buy this GPS dog collar. Like, it was a leap, and actually it was John from our team. We were talking about it, and I asked them their thoughts and if any of them have crossed that bridge, because I've heard horror stories of people crossing those bridges and then just people, having terrible experiences with that back and forth. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm in quite a different headspace of just like, I kind of don't care anymore. And I got that from Gary Vee, right? Listening to Gary Vee just saying, go for it. Like, stop worrying about all the things that can go wrong and just go for it. So I did this year, starting 2022, cross those worlds. And then people asking me questions at work about like my YouTube channel and like, hey, I watched a review. I was thinking about going down to Mexico and like that really helped me. Like all that kind of stuff. And then I'm reaching out to people in my professional life for the podcast. I just had my first professional connection on the podcast, which will be dropped next Friday or this coming Friday. And like that like now I'm like in a groove where it's like I don't have to be these two different entities because I'm kind of not. And I wish my content world and Twitter world were connected more with my LinkedIn, and I'll probably do that over time. But I have people asking me all the time, like, who is this Haul person? Who is this other person? And how does it connect to like who I see on LinkedIn? And I'm like, they're the same person. It's just I'm not there yet, ready to cross that bridge. But I can see how that confusion, I'm going to get over that pretty quickly and just kind of maybe cross the two worlds. But because it's the fear of what people are going to think. But when it really, does it really matter?
Yeah. Just like random strangers. I mean, it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't.
But like there's going to be those people that are like, this is dumb. Like, why would this person do it? And I'm going to disregard what this person says. Like
Yeah.
that's going to happen. Yes.
Oh yeah.
But there's going to be 5 of them and there's going to be 100 people that are like, this is crazy awesome. Take the 95 and leave the 5, or the 100 and the 5, and just go. Like,
Yeah.
and your positive is going to outweigh that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been seeing it. So if anybody's worried about doing it, or you're thinking about taking that leap, there's been a ton more positive out of it than I've had negative in the 2-3 months I did it.
Being your casual self, it seems like your casual self is very, very your business self also. Like, you like to do stuff that you do in business on the side. Like, even going to a Christmas party and getting overwhelmed with like all these things. It's because like that's how you adapt to your business. Like, you're definitely like thinking about this person's feelings and like what's going on over here and and then you go to a party and you're feeling that same way. Like, so much easier when everything's combined. And it seems like you've been sort of like transitioning to that world, and that's why the LinkedIn directory to the content organization, the YouTube, it works so well, you know, with your life in general, and because you've been meshing with it for a while. And I think that that's one thing that when people are trying to get over the fear, they don't go through the process of meshing. They don't go through the process of experimenting on what works and what doesn't. They look at the big picture. It's sort of like looking at someone who has $1 million, and you're like, I want to be that person that has $1 million. Well, you have to work up the process for that, and like, are you willing to do that?
Like, I think about Dr. Disrespect. Like, is he that guy? Like, when the cameras are off and you're sitting in the living room drinking a beer with him, like, is he that guy who's the funny? Is he the party guy all the time? Or does he have to turn that on? And how exhausting is that if he does?
I think for him to be able to be doing it for so many years, I think he might be, searching for a more creative outlet whenever he's at business. But whenever he's at home, I feel like he does have a similar personality, because I agree with you that the whole battery depletion thing would be a major thing. And how could you do that?
Massive.
How could you do that consistently for years without sharing that personality with your personal life? And that's where I think the ease sort of comes in.
No, I'm with you. I think he's just a natural entertainer, right? And he's probably always been, whether that's in high school, like whether being the class clown or just the funny person in a group of people. If you have that as a natural ability, like people get burnt out when they're trying to be something they're not all the time, and you have to keep recycling that. And I think it's why a lot of people stop doing some of their content stuff. But like you said, if you can find what you're good at, what your groove is. I tell this to high school kids all the time. First, find out what you're good at. And if you don't know, ask your parents or ask your closest friends, because they're going to tell you what makes you unique. Yeah. Then type it into Google, find a profession in that arena that uses that skill, and then go check that out. Because if you're in the realm of something you're good at or passionate about or that you like doing, that's a career, not a job. And those are two very different things.
What is the meaning of life to you?
To me, meaning of life is personal growth.
Yeah.
Which is very much in your wheelhouse. And what I mean by that is like, just don't stand still. So like the age old quote of like a business perspective is, if your business is standing still, other people are going to pass you by and you're going to die. That's the same with people. So don't just assume if you want to be successful in your career, that means you're going to have to be agile, change, grow, and do things that you may not have thought you wanted to do or would ever want to do. And that's not just task oriented. That's how you talk to people. That's how you evolve. That's how you evolve with relationships and communication, all of that. Because if you just think that seniority is going to make you climb a ladder, that is completely false. Just like business, if you stand still and you don't change with the times, people will pass you by. And in 5, 10, 2, 15, 20 years, you will look at the people that started the same time you did that have evolved and changed, and they'll be way ahead of you in that corporate ladder. And you will be very upset and most likely be begrudged. So I feel like unhappy people are sometimes the people who push change away internally, and self-reflection and all the jazzy words that everyone uses. Just keep evolving, keep changing, keep being better.
I've been interested in sort of like hearing your concept of the podcast that you're running. You know, what's the creation? What's the creativity drive?
So the title is "What's Your Superpower?" It's one of the questions I ask in a lot of our interviews, not only in like in our content interviews, but I ask it in business as well in interviews, because everyone's unique. Everyone has something that they do well that not maybe everybody can do, or that the person across from you can do. So we start out with that question because I'd like to find out what people think they're good at. And that's a really hard question for some people, but there always is an answer, even though if they don't want to admit it. And then it's really getting into topics I think are important. Like we covered, like I like doing professional, like day in the life of conversations. Like we did teachers and we did journalism and we've done software engineers. And like my sister on Monday, we're talking about being a D1 athlete. She was a D1 swimmer for Penn State. But it's the before, during, and after that I'm interested in, because there's plenty of things where people talk to active D1 athletes and like what it's like, right? What it's like to be a D1 athlete. But the difference that I want to hit is like, what does it feel like going through high school? And then when you realize like this could be an opportunity and people are watching you and you're being scouted, what does that feel like? And then when you're actually in college, like what are the demands? What does the day-to-day look like? What are the perks? And then after, when it's all over and you're not doing it as a profession, like if you're not a D1 football player going to the NFL, if you have to get a real job, what does that feel like after? Like, so getting into that, because I played D3 soccer. So I played sports in college, but I knew it was never going to be long-term for me. It was just something I wanted to continue, but D1 is a different arena, 100% different arena, expectation, schedule, all of that stuff is totally different. So I'm pretty excited to kind of dig into that with her. So really it's just learning about things, questions that come into my head. And then like the one I just wrote down before we jumped on this podcast was like, I was reading an article about just real estate and people kind of moving anywhere now that a lot of jobs are work from home and remote. You can kind of work from anywhere now. Yeah. And there's lots of people that are changing their home location because they're going to live somewhere beautiful because they can. Yeah. And they don't have to be around their office. So like I want to talk to a real estate agent. I actually just posted it on LinkedIn. It's like, anybody know a real estate agent that would come on the podcast to talk about this subject? Because that interests me. Like, what are they seeing? What are they hearing from buyers? What are buyers telling them that's important now? Because I guarantee it's way different than pre-2020. And the world's changing on what's important. And I think that's fascinating from like a real estate perspective. So that's kind of where the subjects come in. So Coder and I, I'm usually setting up the lineup. Coder's just coming along and I'll let him know what the subject is, who's the guest is, and we have this running like episode list. Like I have a Battlefield 2042 conversation coming up because I love that game. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of whatever subjects we're into that we kind of go through.
Concluding remarks, Hall.
No, this was awesome. Juicy. I have no philosophical soapboxy things. I think we covered a lot of that now. So just everybody continue to be freaking awesome.
We the most popular stream on the platform. You want a satisfying stream? I'd say we are the norm. It's time to make it great. It's time to brainstorm. Now watch us juicy otherwise. It's time to transform.